in the scorched deserts of Arizona in the year 1879. On a barren patch of land surrounded by black rocks, a crude wooden structure stood tall, the sun rack, where the Apache people carried out the law of the Sunday. There, Nayeli, a young woman with bronze skin and deep black eyes, hung suspended by a coarse agave rope wrapped tightly around her neck. The searing sunlight pierced through every strand of her hair, shining down on the bruises that marked her bare shoulders. No one was left around, only a few crows circling low, waiting. Before walking away, Chief Decan had shouted loudly enough for the sun to hear, "If your soul is pure, the sun will keep you alive until tomorrow's dawn." Now, the sun seemed to be passing judgment. Every breath Nayeli took was a blade twisting in her chest. She forced her eyes open to look into the distance, where the blurred sand looked like a sea of fire, where her village used to be, the place that had just cast her out for discovering something she was never meant to know. Evening crept in. The sunlight turned to a burning shade of copper. The wind blew through the rack, making it creak with eerie sounds. Nayeli moved slightly, and the rope tightened further. Everything before her eyes began to blur. All that remained was the sound of her slowing heartbeat, the falling grains of sand, and from far, far away, the faint, lonely sound of hooves approaching. The sunset stretched long across the desert, staining the earth with the color of dried blood. Jude Callan rode slowly past the brittle cactus shrubs, his horse panting under the sweltering heat. He had meant to return to the ranch before nightfall, but a faint, raspy cry in the distance made him stop. On a rocky slope, something stirred. Jude frowned, lowered his neck scarf, and drew his gun just in case. As he approached, he saw a body hanging between two boulders, not a corpse, but an Apache girl. Her bare feet twitched slightly, her eyes still faintly open. The rope made of agave had dug so deep into her neck that the blood had already dried. "Dear Lord," he murmured. Without a second thought, Jude slashed the rope with his old Bowie knife and caught her nearly lifeless body. She was light as ash. Gently laying her on the ground, he quickly untied the cords from her wrists and poured water, drop by drop, onto her cracked lips. She opened her eyes, her gaze foggy, panicked, and gasped, do not take me back. They will kill me." Jude froze. That did not sound like the words of a criminal. He looked around. Fresh footprints still marked the sand. The villagers must have just left. There was no time for questions. He pulled off his coat, wrapped it around her, and lifted her onto the horse. The sun sank behind the red mountains. The horse waded through the sand, carrying two shadowy figures deeper into the land of cold winds. From far behind, the ceremonial drums of the Apache still echoed a heavy sound, like a curse from the earth itself. Jude glanced back and saw the sunrack casting a long shadow, like a giant crucifix. He knew, with absolute clarity, from this moment on, he had broken the law of the tribe. And his quiet life at the Red Mesa Ranch was gone for good. Night fell, and the desert turned cold like a wound long sealed. Jude Callan lit a fire inside a small shack nestled against the rocky slope, once a resting post for cattle herders. Nearby, Nayeli lay curled up under a thick blanket, her breathing faint. He changed the water and pressed a damp cloth to her forehead, each motion quiet and deliberate, like someone more accustomed to saving lives than taking them. When she awoke, the firelight flickered across her bruised face. She looked around, her voice hoarse and broken. "You should not have saved me. They will never forgive this." Jude said nothing at first. Then, speaking slowly, his voice dry and worn, "If I had not saved you, you would be dead. Now be quiet. Drink." Meanwhile, miles away, Chief Decan stood before the empty sunrack. The rope had been cut, and horse tracks were deeply pressed into the sand. He roared like a wild beast. His guards lowered their heads, awaiting orders. Decan pointed westward. "The white man has insulted the spirits of our ancestors. Bring me his head." The moon shattered across the sand. 3 Apache riders silently left the village, following the trail of hoofprints. At midnight, Jude heard the distant sound of hooves. He killed the fire immediately, wrapped Nayeli in the blanket, and pulled her down into the crevice beneath the rocks. Moonlight spilled across the sand as 3 shadows swept past. One of them dismounted and bent over the still warm ashes. Jude clutched his old Winchester rifle tightly, Sweat ran down his temple. As one of them took another step forward, he pulled the trigger. The sharp crack of the shot echoed as the man collapsed. The other two fired back, bullets kicking up sand. Jude crawled behind a boulder and fired twice more, forcing them to retreat. Silence returned. The wind howled through the rocks like the wail of a mourner. Nayeli trembled as she looked at him. Now they will come with 100 men. Jude sighed, wiping blood from his face. Then we have to leave before the sun comes up. Above them, the moon had faded halfway, and the horizon was beginning to glow with the color of copper. They packed quickly and left the shelter behind, leaving only the scent of smoke, the trace of blood, and the beginning of a relentless hunt. By the next morning, Jude, Callan, and Nayeli had reached the town of Dustvale, a place that looked like the desert itself had put on a steel helmet. Tattered flags flapped over saloons, sand blanketed every porch, and the townsfolk stared at strangers like they brought trouble with them. Jude's horse stopped in front of the sheriff's office, where the sign reading Sheriff Tom Garrett hung crooked in the wind. Tom stepped out, a big man with speckled silver in his beard and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He recognized Jude instantly. "Good Lord, Callan. I figured you were dead somewhere up in those mountains." Jude replied flatly. "I was trying to stay out of trouble, but it seems trouble found me first." He gave a brief account: an Apache girl tied up in the desert, accused of stealing sacred gold. When Tom saw the deep marks around Nayeli's neck, he went silent. She lowered her head and whispered, voice barely holding, "I did not steal it. They hid gold taken from the miners. I saw it, so they wanted me dead." Sheriff Tom frowned, pulling the pipe from his mouth. "So Deccan wants to silence a witness." He looked at Jude, his eyes a mix of admiration and concern. "You saved her. That means the whole tribe's going to want your hide stretched into a war drum. But I owe you my life from Antietam. I am not about to leave you hanging." They sat around an old wooden table, a map of the desert spread out across it. Tom pointed to the southern mountain range. "That gold stash. I've heard traders say Deccan runs shipments in there every full moon. He might be hiding evidence in one of the rock caves." Jude nodded and turned to Nayeli. "Are you sure you remember the way?" She answered, eyes glowing despite her exhaustion. "I can take you there, but if we go back, they will kill all three of us." Jude gave a faint smile. "Then we are not going back the same way." Outside, the wind kicked up red dust, and the sky hung gray like old steel. The three of them readied their horses, packing only a few rounds of ammunition, some water, and what little hope they had left. As they rode out of town, people watched from porches. No one knew whether it was pity, curiosity, or fear in their eyes, because anyone who dared cross the law of the Apache knew one thing: they would strike without mercy. Thank you for being here with me. If this story brought back memories of dusty evenings and hoofbeats echoing in your heart, go ahead and subscribe to my channel, so each day we can sit together again, and I will tell you another tale from the Old West. It was nearing noon when they reached the southern Rocky Mountains, a place once called the Silent Valley, because every sound was swallowed by the towering cliffs. Nayeli led the way, her footsteps cautious on the scorching stones. Sweat streamed down her neck, but her gaze never wavered. Jude Callan followed close behind, one hand resting loosely on the grip of his gun. Beside him, Sheriff Tom Garrett pulled his horse up the slope, eyes scanning the surroundings. No voices, only the wailing wind and the raw scent of earth. When they finally stopped in front of a narrow rock cave, Nayeli pointed. "Here. I saw them hide it here, the night before they captured me." Jude knelt and pried loose the smaller rocks blocking the cave entrance with his knife. A thick cloth bag emerged, heavy with weight. He opened it. Gold bars, stamped with the seal of the Tucson Bank, glinted under the sunday. Sheriff Tom let out a breath. "Lord have mercy. This is the gold stolen from those mining caravans last year. Deccan killed men to take it." Suddenly, the sound of stones rolling behind them made all three spin around. A figure appeared atop the cliff, one of Deccan's guards, bow drawn and ready. Jude reacted like lightning, pulling the trigger. The gunshot echoed through the valley, and the man fell, blood splattering across the rocks. "They know," Nayeli whispered. Sheriff Tom picked up his hat and said softly, "Then we better move before more of them come." The three of them bolted out of the ravine, hoofbeats pounding against the dry earth. In the distance, A cloud of dust rose, a group of Apache riders approaching fast, carrying dark red ceremonial flags. Jude fired 2 shots into the air to create confusion. Then the 3 slipped into a narrow passage, vanishing behind the rocks. When they reached the foot of the mountain, they paused to catch their breath. Tom tucked the bag of gold into his saddle, then looked to Jude. "We have enough now to expose Deccan, but once this truth comes out, they will see us as defilers of the sacred." Jude answered, his eyes cold as stone. "Worse than death is letting evil survive." Nayeli looked at the 2 men, her heart stirring with both fear and gratitude. She knew that from this moment on, there was no turning back, only the truth. And the bullets needed to protect it. Above them, the sun burned red like an open wound. Somewhere far behind, the tribal horn sounded a call that signaled the confrontation they could no longer avoid. That noon, the town of Dustvale sweltered under the hot wind. Sand swept across the main street, curling around rusted signs. Townsfolk gathered along porches, watching as Chief Deccan rode in, leading more than 24 Apache riders, their faces painted red, their eyes cold as steel. Across the square stood Jude Callan and Sheriff Tom Garrett. Nayeli stood behind them, her face half covered by a brown scarf, her eyes burning with fear. Deccan raised a hand, his voice low and rough, echoing through the heat. "Return the woman. She has defied the spirits and the law of our ancestors. Anyone who hides her will die beneath the same Sunday." Tom stepped forward and tossed a heavy cloth bag onto the ground. Dust burst up as it landed, revealing gold bars stamped with the seal of Tucson. He spoke clearly and firmly. "This is the gold you accused her of stealing. It belonged to the men murdered along the mining trail. Will you lie to the spirits too, Deccan?" A murmur rose among the Apache. Some stepped back, glancing at one another with unease. Deccan's face twisted in rage. He shouted, "That is the word of an outsider. You would believe him over your own blood?" Jude raised his Winchester from his shoulder, his voice raspy but firm. "Justice is not born of blood. It comes from truth. And the truth is in that bag." A heavy silence fell over the square. Then, an older rider stepped out from the group. He looked at Deccan, then at the gold. Speaking in Apache, his voice was slow, but it carried far. "The spirits have no need for gold. The traitor is the one who hides behind the spirits to mask his own sins." As if a dam had broken, the crowd parted. 2 warriors stepped forward, tore the bow from Deccan's hands, and bound him. The ceremonial drums began to beat once again, this time, not for battle, but for judgment. Tom turned to Jude and gave a tired smile. "Justice came late, but at least it came." Jude replied softly, "No, Tom, it didn't come, we dragged it here." The evening sun swept across the earth, lighting up the gold bars like rays of truth. Deccan was led away through the crowd, while Nayeli bowed her head, tears slipping down her cheeks not from fear, but because she knew the sun had passed judgment on the right man today. That afternoon, the sun hung in the sky like a giant blade. The Apache villagers gathered at the edge of the desert, where the sun rack still stood tall amid the burning sands. They rebuilt the same agave ropes once used to bind Nayeli. But this time, it was not her being lifted onto the wooden frame, it was Chief Deccan, the man who had once invoked the name of the ancestors to justify killing. 2 warriors held him firmly, their faces expressionless. Deccan struggled, his voice rasping with rage. "You will be cursed. I am the voice of the spirits." An elder stepped forward, holding a staff carved with the symbol of the Sunday. He spoke slowly, in the ancient tongue Nayeli still understood. "The spirits do not speak through human mouths. They listen only to honest hearts. Today, the sun will listen to yours." They tied Deccan to the sun rack, as the ritual drums beat slowly, like the heartbeat of the desert. Jude Callan stood at a distance, his expression calm and solemn. Beside him, Nayeli's eyes darkened. "I do not want to see blood," she whispered. "Neither do I," Jude replied. "But sometimes, justice must be seen, so it can be remembered." The wind picked up, blowing sand around Deccan's body. Sweat and fear streamed down his face. The sun sank lower, turning a deep blood red. The villagers stood silent, watching. No one came to save him. No one believed his words anymore. Nayeli turned away, tears falling, though even she could not tell if they came from pity or relief. Jude placed a hand gently on her shoulder and said, "The law was never wrong, but those who enforced it forgot what it was for." When night fell, the drum stopped. The sand erased all footprints. Only the sun rack remained, silent in the desert, and the sun, the only true judge, had done its work. Nayeli looked at Jude, her voice trembling softly. "Now, I am free, am I not?" He nodded. "You are free, and so is the Sunday." The two of them turned and walked away, their shadows merging with the copper-red glow of dusk, two souls unshackled at last, heading toward a horizon where justice no longer smelled of smoke and blood. As the first light of dawn turned the horizon gold, Jude, Callan, and Nayeli left the desert behind, retracing the same path they had once taken. The early wind swept through, carrying the scent of earth after a long night, as if trying to erase the tracks of sin and vengeance. Behind them, the Apache village still slept in silence, and the sun rack cast its final shadow, like a chapter quietly closed. They headed north, where the grasslands opened up, and sand slowly gave way to fertile soil. They stopped beside a small valley with a clear stream, birds dancing overhead, and wild grass reaching up to their knees. Jude looked around, his voice gravelly. "This place has enough land for a cattle pen and a wooden house." Nayeli sat by the stream, letting her hands touch the cool water. A smile, her first in days, formed on her lips. "And quiet enough to forget the sound of judgment drums," she replied. In the days that followed, they raised timber frames, built fires, and staked fence posts together. Jude worked in silence, while Nayeli sang old Apache songs, her voice echoing through the valley like prayers for the lost souls. The bruises on her neck faded, replaced by the sun-kissed skin of a working woman. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set, Jude said softly, "In this land, the only law I want to keep is to be kind." Nayeli rested her head on his shoulder, her voice light as the wind. "And I will teach the children here to sing about justice not through blood, but through compassion." Far off, birds flew across the fiery horizon. Their little ranch stood quietly in the green fields, a soft punctuation mark on the harsh map of the Wild West. In a land of dust and hardened hearts, there are those who ask for no name, no praise. They simply do what is right. They are the ones who rescue strangers in sandstorms, the hands that lift the fallen when no one dares to look. The world survives not because of the strong, but because of the kind-hearted who choose to stand up for justice. It is not the sun or the law that judges a person, but how they choose to face the truth. In this land, all it takes is one soul brave enough to cut the rope of injustice, and the darkness will step back. It has been an honor walking with you through this story. I truly hope you will always find peace and happiness, no matter where life takes you. I love you, my dear listeners of Wild West Storytelling. Tell me how you felt about this tale. Leave a comment right below. Tap the number 1 if you enjoyed this story. And do not forget to subscribe to the channel for more thrilling Western stories to come.